Hey, this is Ross Payton with Roleplay Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 123, Pushing the Envelope. And with me, as most of the time, our co-host, Tom Church. And we also have Aaron and special guest Dan and special guest Shaun. Shaun, not the old Shaun, but the new Shaun, with his name spelled different. Because we had another Shaun. So
we had German Shaun.
Had German Shaun.
Wow.
Well, no,
he wasn't really German.
Just like,
he was history Shaun.
Okay.
Yeah, history Shaun.
Ross, it wasn't just your voice. You had like a jaunty face when you did that intro.
Oh, it's the holidays. You know how.
Oh, you're feeling it.
I'm feeling the.
You're feeling the joy.
Yes. So in this episode, we're actually going to be talking about handling sensitive issues in the game. Should you push the envelope in your game?
Our gift to you over the holidays.
Yes.
Crippling depression.
Wow. Among other things. But I'm also excited because Death Traps Volume 1 for Base Raiders is out. It's a PDF supplement written by not just me, but Caleb. Caleb wrote some Death Traps for you guys.
Imagine that.
In
the maestro himself.
Yes. So... it's $3.99. It will have 5 unique death traps in it, with stats and game mechanics and backstory, and just ready to throw into any kind of base in your Base Raiders game. So, and also backers of the Boiling Point Kickstarter will get their PDF copies for free through DriveThruRPG. So check your email.
That's what you get for being awesome and supporting us.
Yes.
Those who don't, you're not awesome.
Wow. Well, they can buy it and be awesome.
Yeah, they can still buy it and be awesome in their own separate.
Fine, you do that, you're awesome again. We have compromised the awesomeness issue.
Also, if you're a Patreon backer at the $10 level or above, and you have been for at least a few months, please enter in your mailing address in your user profile, so I can mail you a postcard from Patreon. This is a one-time reward for Patreon backers. I don't know if I'll ever do this again. This is kind of an experiment to see how much of a pain in the ass it is and how expensive it is to mail postcards overseas and around the country. But it's a full-color postcard of the art from RPPR, the Plays the Thing, our take on Macbeth.
It is a crimson bouncy castle.
It is beautiful and brilliant.
We are master thespians.
I think Dan just found them. So
that is an amazingly grimdark bouncy castle.
It
Not
is.
Gonna lie,
the grimmest and darkest. So that's something to look forward to in the mail. And of course, in this episode, we'll have some shout-outs and an anecdote later on. But first off, well, I guess we should get to the main topic.
That's what you pay us for.
Dan
what
suggested.
Payment?
Because obviously this issue has come up before in comments and other things on the site on how to handle darker issues, topics in games, especially in horror games. But Dan, just through internal discussion on RPPR, you kind of came up with a scenario concept, and that kind of led to this show topic. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
well, essentially, it was going with some of the comments that have been made about some of the darker themes, and even some people talking about, one of the comments on even the Robo campaign was that it's nice to have a more lighthearted fare on the AP thread.
Yeah. That is true. We do tend to go... I mean, most of our major campaigns have been pretty dark.
Yeah, but even still, it's like for as dark as we've gotten, sometimes there are some issues that we still don't touch very often. And when we do, we're... there's that gun-shy hesitation about whether or not we should even touch it or do anything.
I noticed that when we are going to do it, we treat it with the respect I think it deserves, like by saying, is everyone going to be cool with this?
Yeah,
because I don't think there's ever been an issue where we've immediately dropped that kind of bomb on anybody else to the point where it would be disturbing or uncomfortable enough. But given the fact that we've had comments, sadly, out of the last one, that kind of sparked a big debate.
Well, yeah. But Dan...
we're not going to go into the details.
Yeah.
No.
Why don't you talk about... Yeah, you had an idea for a scenario, and this sort of led to this whole topic, so...
Well, yeah, and part of that internal discussion amongst us here at RPPR, one of the things was mental illness and how some RPGs do really well in trying to handle or simulate mental illness. Others do not.
A lot do not.
Yeah, a lot do not. Like Call of Cthulhu at least has a sanity system in place, but I know that I've had discussions with people about, some mental illness as being biological in nature. How does staring into a book suddenly make you have that disorder? Which is kind of odd, but
There are ways that I could justify that by saying, like, the book itself is like emitting basically mythos radiation, and it's basically you're getting mythos cancer,
and it's all up in your brain.
Or you're getting thought cancer from it,
or you're getting you have an item that literally is connecting to a realm with different laws of physics, and we have no idea how that's going to affect somebody either.
But if you're using the Call of Cthulhu rule set and you're not dealing with things in the mythos, then it starts to fall apart.
Sure.
But then again, you're walking away from the premise of the game.
Yeah.
And so, talking about mental illness, in that, there's stereotypes and stigma involved around that. Like one of the, and I'm coming straight off of a training about how to teach mental health first aid. And so, one of the statistics we talked about in there was that, there's the preconception that someone with mental illness is more likely to be violent.
Right.
That's what media would have us believe, given the fact that every time some massive violent act occurs, the first question is, well, are they mentally ill and were they getting the right treatment? When realistically, people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of violence than they are to be perpetrators of violence.
This is normally we normally hear more about it when it's the other way around, because that's better ratings for a news story.
Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. And so what the scenario that I pitched was I originally pitched it as a Delta Green scenario where either Delta Green agents or friendlies encounter individuals that when they have some kind of attack or relapse or are not successfully managing their disorder, that they become a mythos vector. Like the specific example I used was somebody that if they have an acute schizophrenia event, that they pull so many people within 10, 20, 30 feet with them into Carcosa, and the person comes back, but the other people don't. So how would Delta Green handle that scenario? Of course, Ross brought up, why wouldn't they just shoot the guy in the head?
Because one thing that Delta Green, in its own writing, makes a point is that Delta Green really, they're not good guys. Right. They're exterminators. They do what they think is necessary to preserve the human species. And that means, if there's any doubt, destroy everything. So, like, they will not gladly, but they will readily kill innocent people. And just because they might be bad, or they might do something that will hurt other people later on.
And I remember talking with you, Dan, when you brought this up, that the only way I was seeing that might work in the Delta Green one is if you had like a Cowboys versus corporate, that the Cowboys maybe had some other knowledge that they were trying to either act on or maybe pass on to corporate, who wasn't listening to it. So, but
right, and so then, well, the internal conflict of that scenario that I was proposing was putting the PCs in a situation where they have to decide: do we kill this person, or do we help them manage their illness?
Yeah. That's exactly, and that's sort of the dilemma of how do you structure the scenario. And we talked about ways that could happen in the scenario. But the other thing is, like, just approaching that in that scenario in that way, would that even be handling that topic correctly? I mean, or like in a way that does it justice. Again, because I think the goal here when we're talking about the show is how to do sensitive issues with out being exploitive or feeding into stereotypes, or I mean the biggest goal actually is not pissing off or alienating people at your own game table,
right?
Because you don't know what other people's life stories are. You don't know, like, maybe somebody's mother or relation or somebody, some cousin or somebody, or are struggling with mental health, and they're like, I don't want to have a scenario where I have to treat someone like my aunt as a threat or a monster, because I feel sorry, I'm trying to help her, that kind of thing. So, and that's kind of thing. So,
right. And a large part of that, at least on the mental health side, is that, learning how to approach it and just learning how to change your own language. And again, that's me talking from my own professional background in training and education, is that you use person first language. You don't say, the schizophrenic attacks you. He's like, well, this person who's suffering from schizophrenia is having an episode, and you are going to be harmed. a lot more words, and even still saying suffering from schizophrenia might even be depending on the situation, still has a negative connotation. But that's just one of the things. Like your home language, if you're wanting to approach this topic, you need to be able to talk about it respectfully yourself and be able to train yourself to say it. So if you're wanting to push the envelope in any other way, like if you want to talk about child abuse, you need to talk about it in a way that doesn't make it, you don't disregard it or make it flippant. You kind of address it in a way that's like, this is serious. This is something that has happened, and it's not inherently good, bad, or funny.
Right.
It's just a thing that happened, and you guys need to respond to it. How do you choose to respond?
So in other words, you need to do research and prepare. You can't just rely on just the first idea that comes off your head and just like, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah. I've heard it was, but someone said, like, if you're going to address a controversial or sensitive issue, the first thing you need to do is know what you're talking about.
Right.
No, exactly how these kind of things, for example, if you're dealing a game about a schizophrenic person, how does schizophrenia work? Like, how does that person act? Like an actor doing research for the role, like you need to, because the Hollywood version of schizophrenia is very different from the real version of schizophrenia, is my understanding.
Yeah, and the Hollywood version of schizophrenia is usually very one-dimensional, and it doesn't address the fact that there's large varieties of ways that it can choose to manifest, or it's like a lot of the time they focus on the hallucinations. They don't focus on some of the disjointed thinking or thought processes that go along with it.
Yeah.
So
it's a challenge, in other words.
Yeah.
I guess that's the first thing. If you want to do this, be sure it's extra work. So
yeah.
Actually, I remember that person was talking about that. He said, was talking about this Twilight movie.
Yeah.
Where we're going to deal with abortion. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people hated that one, is because it's Stephanie Meyer's talking about something she clearly doesn't know anything about.
Okay.
Or it's coming from someone that no one believes is an expert on the topic.
Okay. Yeah, you have to have credibility.
You do.
At least among the players.
And I think, just part of that, because, again, the scenario I ran at Gen Con, the reason why people liked it this way they did is because I had been so marinated in that.
Well, for the listeners, this is the scenario ran Monsters and Other Childish Things.
Yeah.
I forgot the exact title. It was
White Forest Institute or something like that.
It was something, to go home again or something like that.
Yeah, to go home, we have to leave things behind.
And we have that on the actual play site, so you can take a look at that. So that, and basically the idea is
I was in that scenario.
Yeah. Or at least the first playtest. And so, what was the initial premise of the game?
The initial premise of the game was the fact that the children and their monsters have all been targeted or have been taken to this White Forest Institute because when something happened and the kids tried to blame their monster, and everyone's like, oh, well, these children are obviously not right, so we're going to take them away for treatment in a residential facility until they get better. And so the staff at the facility are trying to convince these children that their monsters don't exist. While at the same time, there's some kind of weird series of events or confluence that prevent the monsters from being able to manifest in front of their children and be able to prove to them that, yes, we do exist. It's like, well, now I'm taking meds and my therapist is telling me they don't exist, so maybe they don't really exist, and so the bonds between monster and child are severed. That's something that, people responded to pretty well, even though some of the sessions kind of went to some dark places. People still rolled with it and ran with it. And if I hadn't had all of that firsthand experience and knowledge, it would have been a struggle for me to run.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Without doing a lot of research on it first.
Yeah, the research can be, like, if you work in this kind of field, obviously you don't have to do any extra research if it's your job or something that you're studying professionally. What are some other topics? Have any of you guys, like Aaron, have you run any games that you've had to do extra work for this kind of thing, or Tom, or...
I'm trying to think of well, actually, yes, a little bit of that when I was running for I can't remember the name that I actually
Was
gave
it
it
the,
to. It was the tunnel one.
The Beloved Dead.
The Beloved Dead. Thank you too from taking that. No, yeah, I actually looked into a lot of homeless culture around that time because I realized my knowledge was very little of that, and actually one of our friends, Jacob, kind of gave me a little bit perspective about that.
Yeah.
Because of his experiences with the homeless community out in San Francisco and how they moved in groups and they were very supportive of each other. And in addition to that, watching also the documentary Dark Days, which you pointed to me, and which is the original inspiration for that. And kind of seeing and seeing what life would be like as a panhandler or some of these people who actually live normal lives but just have no homes.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a key thing. They were supportive of each other, and I think like the Hollywood depiction of homeless communities or cultures is that they're very like
they're criminal.
Dog eat dog. It's very criminal. It's very much you have to. It's like almost like a prison thing. If you don't watch out, you're going to get killed.
Yeah, it's a shank or be shanked world.
I mean, it's not a utopia by any stretch of the means.
No, but it was much. It was much more cooperative because kind of going back with what Jacob had told me previously, with the experiences that he had with them, that they would gather some resources around and spread them out after the day, like this many cigarettes for these people. Hey, this place is getting out free food here, so
altruism.
Yeah.
And I've done the same thing. Like when I ran games set like in World War II, where the players were actually playing Nazis.
Yeah.
Or like they were playing like commissars of the Stalin regime.
Okay.
I actually have to kind of be careful of that. That too. Like I can't glorify it. It's like well, you guys get to be evil today because
although, I mean.
Well, the actual commissar that you were playing, that.
No, I was actually thinking of the. I was thinking of the Nazi spy game. That one did go a little pulp with but that was more the players and the dog punching and whatnot. So but anyways,
or playing like prisoners of war in.
That's a very good one. Like who they were, where they're from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the first Divine Fire, or then kind of going with other people's research too, because we probably could ask Caleb later on about the stuff he did for Dangers of Fraternization, because all the characters that we played, or especially the NPCs, it was all gray area. There was no immediate black or white.
Right. And there's like scenarios I thought of that I just don't want to do. Like I thought of one set in a concentration camp, but I'm like, I just don't know if I can. That could be
see, there we go. There is such thing as a bridge too far that you could go, and there's also the larger question of is it worth it? I mean, RPGs, I think art can be art, but they're also supposed to be fun. Like you want to play, and if you play a game in a concentration camp, like, oh my god, like that would just like. I would not be ready to wake up the next day.
That's a level of nihilism we're not ready to deal with.
One of the central aspects of role-playing that I always kind of am drawn towards is it's escapism. You're doing this to kind of, I'm not saying everybody's life is terrible and that's why we play role-playing games. It's not like that. It's more just, it's that you're reaching towards something a little bit higher and it's on some level, at least something more interesting. So there's that to take into account as well. How grimdark do you want to go?
Well, and one of the stereotypical examples of like, if you want to run a game with that brushes against controversial or sensitive topics, you could just run a D&D. Everyone is some kind of evil alignment game. Yeah, and that will get grimdark really fast if you are not careful and manage it effectively.
I think the problem, although there is one, if you're going to do a D&D or type game where everyone is evil, you have to come up with you have to structure the campaign very well, because otherwise everyone goes cartoonishly evil and everyone starts backstabbing each other immediately. Like, bad guys work together. Like, the Nazis worked together really well.
And they did.
That was terrible for the rest of us. It would have been better if they immediately backstabbed each other. But
and that's
there was backstabbing.
Is like, because even then you get varying degrees of evil. It's just like, oh my god, he took it to that point, he went that far, he killed so many puppies, he must die. It's like, well, if you're not a good person, you probably shouldn't feel bad about killing puppies. Yeah. But
I think it's true. Like, I think most people actually suck at playing evil people, because their idea of evil is totally over the top.
Well, and it's also hard because in that particular genre, even the good aligned people are still slightly sociopathic.
Yes, they are.
Like in World War II, there were no real heroes in terms of like nation states. Like the Allies bombed a lot of civilians, like Dresden, and of course
Tokyo,
Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. A lot of
Firebombing,
innocent people died and were killed, and a lot of people were left behind to die. I mean,
because it's war.
General MacArthur left behind all those U.S. soldiers in the Philippines, and that didn't work out so well from them. There's a lot. There's a lot of complexity. I think part of the problem of not wanting to do an evil thing is, just they're not used to acting or like pretending to be someone that they're diametrically opposed to. Because it gets to be uncomfortable. Be like, yes, I can understand. I will execute this innocent person to punish the village because they had some resistance fighters, and that makes you feel uncomfortable. And then it's also again going back to reading your own table. But
and asking the question.
I even dropped the character for that same reason in the Parts of God's Teeth Not Yet posted. So it's just the character felt too icky.
Yeah,
and I had to switch, even though the replacement wasn't necessarily a good person. He was just a little...
He was someone you could roleplay more.
Right. It was a lot easier to do that. So,
but Dan, you were saying?
But that just goes into the next part of the topic. Is like, how do you decide whether or not addressing this particular issue at your game table is going to be worth it? That the payoff is going to be worth it.
It can be extremely rewarding if it's handled well. I mean, that's why the extra effort comes into a more satisfying, a more memorable game. Mm-hmm. So it can be worth it. So don't take our discussion to be like, oh, never, keep it in Candyland forever.
Candyland can get pretty.
Yeah, we know Adventure Time is grimdark. Okay, So how do you tell if your table is ready for this? I think the first thing, unless you're a telepath and you can literally read their minds, is to actually talk to them and ask them, "Hey guys, I want to do a game about this. What do you think?"
And if they look at you in horror, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah. Or Dan, what other thing? I mean,
well, and also that just feeds into knowing the people you play with and knowing what types of games and what types of topics your players or your available DMs respond to.
Yeah.
Like even amongst our group, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. It seems there are certain
we have
games,
multiple groups now, which is great.
Like there are some games that I particularly shy away from.
Sure.
More grimdark settings because I do want to escape the grimdark reality that is working in my field.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. But I also know that some people don't like fantasy. Some people don't like the Candyland style tropes. Yeah. And so it's just being able to have that conversation and being straightforward and honest with your players and your other gamers is that, if there's somebody that is not comfortable by this scenario, I need to know.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about something, especially when you're approaching a sensitive topic and it's not something people openly discuss, you don't have to ask, well, there's going to be some themes of rape in this game. Is anyone here ever been raped and wouldn't be comfortable talking about it?
Yeah, don't say that.
Don't do that.
No. Just ask, this is going to talk about sexual assault or whatever, and you can just email me. If anybody emails me, I will not do it. Or if anybody's like, ooh,
or if you're just not comfortable with it, are you okay with stepping out this session?
Yeah, for example, that's why I don't handle.
Well, even still, that can get a little bit of an issue. It's like, like if we all sat here and decided to run a game like that, or I was running the game and I sent said somebody send me an email and. The rest of us will just play. If Aaron didn't show up, you're like, why does Aaron not want to play in this game? Is there something about him we don't know?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's unwittingly outing somebody towards something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. So you have to be sort of mature and discreet in tackling this. I mean, and as
there are multiple ways to handle it, and I think the consensus is that at the end of the day, you just have to realize that if one person at your table is not going to be okay with it, you might have to be okay with not running that scenario with your table. Yeah. That might be something like if you frequent cons, you might throw that up as a con game and just put that warning out there saying this game will address this topic.
Yes, very explicit labels, content advisory, whatever.
Trigger warnings,
and they all mean the same thing basically. I mean, they're like. This talks about this. If you have a problem with it, it's like movie ratings in some way, but more explicit. Like because our movie ratings now are hardly useful, because like an R-rated movie from 20 years ago is vastly different from an R-rated movie today, and like you don't know if that R rating is because of 35 people are disemboweled and murdered, or 2 dudes kiss each other, which is what it takes to get an R rating in a lot of cases, especially if it's a low-budget movie. If it's a low-budget indie art film, oh no. None of that.
I've also noticed,
there's a great documentary about all this called This Film's Not Yet Rated, I think.
Yeah.
I've also noticed, and often the more, like, when you take something that could be controversial, put a more fantastical spin on it, it is less so. Like, if I had a game where like you're going to be going after a serial rapist, that could be, icky. But if you're dealing with deep ones, it's the same kind of things that happen, but now it's monsters instead of people.
Well, it's kind of looking at it in the terms of like in a movie example like Pan's Labyrinth, which very much was a fantasy, but also it was set in the backdrop of the Spanish Civil War and the horrors that happened there.
And being a civilian in a war zone,
and that part of that might be you might be more okay with deep ones. Being the adversary, because you have literally dehumanized your opponent to the point where it's like, that's an entity that I can't understand. They're from beyond my time and space.
But they bleed.
They bleed. If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Yeah.
And like in Shanghai, like I dealt with that, and I think I didn't even realize until I got to that point, like, oh shit. But the thing is, by that time, everyone was like, no, we're good. But we know we know what to do here. We're
sorry.
And having this conversation, I just realized that part of the Dresden campaign has been brushing up against a topic that it's not. It
is a sensitive issue. Yeah,
it is a sensitive issue.
Absolutely.
Eric, one of the players, he's playing a changeling affiliated with the Lost Spring Court of the Fae, and he's moonstruck, and he uses his Fae abilities to charm the pants off of women, literally.
Yeah.
And so there are times that he has done that to try to help advance the plot, or even for his own character development, to say, like, my character's not a good person. He sometimes does things that's not okay.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we walk away from that table feeling a little squicky about it. And we have to be able to address, like, I have to do better moving forward with that character and being able to address it.
You have to confront him with the consequences of his actions.
Oh, I already have plans for confronting him with one of the consequences of his actions. It's going to be a slow roll, but it'll be fine.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's squicky now, but then I guess it could be more cathartic once it's resolved. If it has that kind of... Right. That's the thing about fiction, is that it can have what we would think a morally just ending, like, or some sort of like, not necessarily happy ending, but one that, like, like the ending of True Detective Season 1. Like, you're like, yes, that is a satisfying ending for that. Unlike real life, which never ends. I mean, for particular people it does, but like, innocent, it just keeps going on.
Yeah, the ride never ends.
Yeah, the ride never ends.
And so, and I think there are some other things that's just, we as the players, as the consumers of the industry, the gaming industry products, we have to be a lot more selective and a lot more policing ourselves better, because the industry itself does not have a very great track record about handling sensitive topics.
Hi, Fatal.
Yeah, well, Fatal. Okay, like, I know people bring up Fatal, but Fatal really is. It's a cartoonish thing. It was done by amateurs who, like, they never got it to print. It's just a PDF. They never made any money with it. I think what's more problematic, if we want to use that word, would be something like Black Dog Industries, which I think Shaun would like to talk about, because you're more of an expert in this.
I was a tremendous White Wolf nerd back in the day.
Yeah.
So what happened was White Wolf was really trying to they were pushing the envelope early on. They were kind of, maybe I'm just being way too grandiose in this. They did actually change the landscape of gaming a bit.
They did. White Wolf did. I don't think anyone.
It was really a huge revolution in the whole thing. And they did address a lot of the hot button issues. They did address mental illness, and a lot of players would do these teddy bear hugging, pranking Malkavians instead of actually addressing.
There's a term for it, or there's a bit of slang for it called fish malk. From
slapping people with fish.
Well, it's specifically from art from Vampire the Middle Ages, Dark Ages one, where there's a Malkavian kissing a dead fish.
Yes.
So he's like, oh god, another fish malk. Oh, look how wacky I am.
Right. Yeah. So there was that whole issue, but then there was also
extremely problematic for mental health reasons.
Yes. Other things that were they would try to address the bigger, deeper, darker issues because, well, World of Darkness. If that's not a clue that they're going to try to do that, really. Okay. So they eventually came up with Black Dog Industries, and I know I'm probably going to misspeak on a few things here. My history's not as good as it used to be. But Black Dog Industries became their outlet to publish everything that they knew would be controversial, just downright itchy skin, bad feeling stuff.
Right.
But that these things existed in their world, so they were going to address it. And on the side note, which I know you're going to bring up, it sold books.
It did sell books, yeah.
So some of the things they published in that were interesting. And if you had a group that was properly primed and could handle it without it getting to that cartoon darkness, we're just going to go relive Hellraiser, but from the side of the, Cenobites just because we're bad people kind of mentality. If you wanted to address that, they made the rules for it and sold it. They already had these things available in the main books, but it
was more muted.
Right.
Like
it was the bad guys.
It was implied in like the thing about Black Dog, from what I remember of it, is that they didn't really separate between like this is like mature for actually mature people product or versus like I'm going to guar the shit out of this book.
Well, actually, the thing is, if you read a lot of the commentary they have at the opening of the book, they had all the warnings. They did put in the trigger.
They were being
warnings.
very edgy.
They were. Oh yes, they were incredibly edgy, cynical Gen Xers about it. But
Edge masters.
Yes, I'm so edgy you bleed. But at the same time, they still would get neck deep in all this.
Yeah.
And so to say like some of the things that I would say probably went a bit too far were like the Fomori book.
Yeah.
And the Spectres book, which I had a copy of, I'll admit, which had some of the most eye-gouging, awful. It was actually really high quality, but awful as like content-wise art.
Yeah.
They went there. They went every kinds of there. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but if you're really interested.
Yeah.
Sure, you can find a copy on Amazon somewhere.
Or just a list of, a hierarchy of sins.
There's probably PDFs out there, too.
But this was an example of a company, they were pushing it, they were pushing that envelope, they were kind of forcing at the boundaries there. And did they go too far? I'm not going to say of course they did. Well, for many groups, that is way too far. For some groups, it might not have been it, but mostly a lot of this probably never got run.
Yeah.
And another thing Black Dog Games published as well that was really good was the Last Supper campaign. Mm-hmm. This did not get published under the White Wolf imprint. It was under Black Dog. And it wasn't explicitly as horrible, grimdark, disgusting, Cronenberg-esque,
Yeah.
It was just a bit intense.
Yeah.
So
like that's what I was saying. Like you had some books like the Fomori that were super cartoonishly evil, and then there were ones that were more like mature or like reasonable.
So
dark. But
this kind of has been addressed historically, and then I'm not going to name which system it was. Tom and I discussed this the other night. There was a prime example of what not to do.
Yeah.
Oh, this might trigger somebody. I don't know. Probably not. But I'm giving an example. This is something that happened in a game book from the 80s. There was a random insanity chart. That's always a great way to start.
Yeah.
One of the entries on this chart was homosexuality.
I think we've mentioned this before on the podcast, and this is and I was actually thinking about this.
Do you want to name drop the book? I know the one.
It doesn't matter really.
Okay,
because I don't think it was the only. I think there were other.
Well, the one that I was thinking of was specifically one of the early editions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness.
Yeah, it was Palladium.
Yeah,
that's not a surprise.
You could get insanities from head trauma, like just being hit in the head really hard.
So you could be hit in the head really hard and suddenly decide that you are a homosexual.
Right.
Well, that actually falls in line with the cartoon physics of the 80s.
Right.
You get hit in the head, and now you have a new personality.
Yeah, and yeah. So if you're doing Team ET, where you're talking mutant animals who fight crime for reasons,
true, but
that it was still like incredibly like
not cool, not cool.
Yeah. So
why do we let Phil write that line?
No, that was Kevin Symbieta. Everything it's Symbieta all the way down.
Yeah, because even if somebody else wrote it, Symbieta edited enough of it to get the same content but put his name on it.
That's true.
You have to approve everything.
Yes, Kevin Sabiet is a terrible micromanager. From everything we've heard, I've never talked to the man. I've never met. Well, actually, I think I maybe said like hi to him at Gen Con or something like that.
Braver soul than the rest of
I remember.
us.
And then he chased you like for 16 blocks.
Yeah, clearly, yeah, he's in terrific shape for being a game designer. So that's the thing. Like you have to think about like what your table is, what's going to be rewarding for your table to run, and because these games can be more challenging, but they can have a better ending and more satisfying. And there are a lot of players who need a certain level of darkness just to like take the game seriously. Because if it's too nice, if it's too
fluffy bunnies,
fluffy bunny, Dora the Explorer kind of thing, like they're like, I don't care. But of course, on the other hand, there are going to be those guys out there that are
the bronies.
Like the edge masters. I was going to think the super people who like. That really like Frank Miller, and think that everything needs to be super. That maturity is not that. The difference between whether something is for kids and for adults is how much.
You know what? I deeply respect women.
Yeah, well, by how many atrocities are in it, and like that's not what the difference between adult and kids are. But that's how some of them think. So I think that's a bad idea to put things in there just to think that this will make the game more mature. If I put in, some terrible thing against,
it's the game design variant of going into middle school, realizing you can cuss, and then every third word you say is fuck or shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You
don't want it like
seeing those people.
You don't want to do that because it doesn't really add anything. It actually cheapens it because it doesn't have the same level of impact. If everyone is a Sin City character and everyone is a Sin City criminal doing all sorts of terrible things, then nothing is. There has to be some variety. In the games that we do these, I hope that we've made the actual crimes or the actual atrocities very meaningful. They're very dark and it really affects the characters. I hope so, at least in our games. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So let's see.
Well, no, I think the assault and murder in Lady Gaga 2.0 was very mature. Don't you?
Well, again, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there are certain things can be treated different ways. Like murder, for example, is often treated rather comedically. And if you're doing a Looney Turn, like in our games at least,
and that's something. It's like you could have a group that's entirely okay with, ending the life of another human being, but if you bring up sexual assault, whoa, now,
yeah. It's the difference between Law and Order SVU and Agatha Christie, like that little town, or like a Murder She Wrote, like that little town.
Actually, I think
Murder She Wrote lives in is the murder capital of the universe. Yeah, so many people get killed there.
They actually did a comparison of the places with the highest murder per capita.
Yeah,
and they said actually, if you go by the population of the area and the number of murders, Cabot Cove was had the highest murder rate of any place on Earth, and number 2 was Juarez.
Yeah.
Quick conspiracy theory. She masterminded all of the murders herself. She is Moriarty. Beware.
Yeah.
Which
she feeds on them.
Yeah. Shaun and I actually talked about this the other night as a quick aside, and I think this is actually pretty good because Angela Lansbury did play the main controller in the Manchurian Candidate. So,
that's good.
So she is the ultimate mastermind.
Well, I would say most of our RPGs, like ours is the difference between investigating a gruesome murder and clicking on cops in Payday 2. That's really how it's done.
It depends on the context, and both can be fun. It's just what you want to do and what you think will be like the whole point of running a game is coming up with something new, something interesting, something that will excite and interest your players. And so you have to keep changing what you're doing. You can't just run the same thing over and over again. That's all your players ever want is Dungeon Crawl of the Week, Dungeon Crawl of the Week.
I could not exist in that group.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So you need to have some sort of variety, and some of that is maturity. So, we tend to go kind of in dark places in some of our games, some more than others. But there are some things that I'll just never run in games because I just don't think it would be worth it, and then there are some that I won't run just simply because I think they're too boring, like a lot of like financial crimes. I don't know, like unless there's a body attached to it, like I don't think the players would get
Andrew's Fortune.
Well, like if you were state investigators investigating credit card fraud or like a payday loan place, and there's no murder, there's just like committing financial regulation frauds. I think that would get really boring for you guys.
And the climax is you're under arrest for credit card fraud.
Yeah, exactly. So
if it doesn't lead anything to deeper, like this is part of some other massive drug conspiracy or the
company has their success because they also worship Nyarlathotep.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't know, Dan. Are there any kind of topics that you think we haven't covered that you think we would be good to cover, or that I mean, obviously the mental health is the big one.
We could have a discussion about ourselves and how we would, like, we've already approached like what types of games would we be comfortable with being in, or how do when since we've got at least 10 people that are available to play a game, it's like when you see a game subject pop up, is there ever a topic that you just go, ugh, no thanks?
Well, I mean, for me, it actually is sexual assault, and not just because of personal reasons, but on storytelling levels, because rape and sexual assault is so often used as a motive, not for the character. Like, it's just so often used, like, oh, my wife was attacked, I need to get revenge, or like, or it's just such a cliche now, in comic books and other kind of sci-fi and fantasy fiction, that I just like, oh my god, not again.
And to kind of use another term for that, it's very much a lazy way to take the fridging option in order to give motive to your characters.
Women in refrigerators, so that like on a storytelling level, I'm just like, just want that cliche to die, because it's been done so often and it's such a one-dimensional thing now. So that's, for me, that would be my personal thing. Shaun, did you?
Yeah, really. Sexual assault. That's all it is. Like vengeance.
It's a very simple thing. It's a very one-dimensional thing, and it's been done a lot. And
most people would be totally okay, even in a game, like, there's a rapist, I can kill that guy.
Yeah.
I feel nothing.
Yeah. So it's kind of, and well, I mean, there are a lot of complex issues in there, but a lot of them, I think, like, if you're investigating like a sexual crime, like, then it gets like, oh, if it turns into he said she said, I'm like, ooh, that would be a nightmare as a game master to run, because then it's about the player themselves, their biases, and and especially if there's no satisfying conclusion, like, you can never know what happened in the end. Like, oh god, that would get too dark, like, because that's how it is in real life.
Like, god, it'd be like, god, I want to escape this game now.
Yeah,
and then it's like, if we ever ran a game like that and it found its way up on the AP thread, we could watch the comment section implode on itself.
Yeah, well, I never run games based on what I think the commenters are going to say. Like, if it's the quality of the game that I think about.
Well, no, I was saying, with that kind of ending and that kind of thing, it was like, there's obvious, like, all that you have to go on then is the player's bias, not even the PC's bias.
Yeah.
It's like, that could turn into just a nightmare after the fact, like, for us in the comment section, but if for you and your personal table, that could be a good way to watch your table implode.
True. People will take sides like they would in real life, or they would. That's the kind of thing that could turn very ugly. Are there any other kind of topics, Shaun?
I was going to address something else. Just take a general. I was going to address something a moment up. Some cliches that could die. I mean, remember, I'm just getting back into gaming recently, so I haven't really had a chance to get a lot of the. Nothing's really had a chance to start grading on me so far. But I can say in general entertainment, like, for example, in general entertainment, a related one is for female character development. There's always the pregnancy angle, and that's lazy writing to me. It really is. It's like, your only value as a human being is through reproduction. Wow.
Okay, so sort of an aside on you three, or at least everybody with Tron's probably know what I'm referring to. On the GroupMe, one of the people in the GroupMe, Richard, has been posting every once in a while links to this D&D Facebook group that he has been like.
Well, I'm looking at the general reactions of the table here.
And he's just saying, like, every fourth or fifth topic is like, my character got turned into a woman and is now pregnant. I don't know who the husband or who the father is. What are there game mechanics for this? And it's just,
who's doing that? Why?
My theory is that these are fetishists and they're just trying to, like, oh man, this is just part of how they get their jollies. Or it could literally be like middle school kids who are running D&D like middle school kids or high school kids.
I can only hope and then they get better information or grow out of it or something, and this is not like
one
adults.
Of them what happens if you raise someone as an undead and then rape them? Is it still rape?
What? Was that part of that thing too? Or?
I don't remember that. I just remember the pregnancy one.
Yeah.
But to kind of backtrack on that.
I think there was shape-changing or polymorphing involved, so I was polymorphed into an elf. Does that still or that was a separate question. Like, if I polymorph back to human, is that going to affect the, oh my god, there's so pregnancy as a hook is actually also another.
I mean, it's something that can be. I mean, it's just overall the main topic is just lazy writing.
Yeah.
As far as even just for players, even it applies because you have to do something more interesting with how you react to it. Are you just going to have your character flip out at having seen some monstrous horror? Or can you come up with a more interesting thing to do when you are flipping out, as opposed to just, I cry in the corner?
I mean, the thing is, we're not going oh God, you need to be, politically correct or whatever all the time. It's about good storytelling. And the thing about all these stereotypes and cliches is that not only are they offensive to certain people and thus can alienate people at your table without you realizing it, because you don't know what people are going to be offended by or pissed off by or what they're going to be affected by. Ignoring all that, it's bad storytelling. So to have I am pregnant and you must blah 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 blah, or I have been attacked and you must get revenge for me, or so.
But the other thing I want to address was, again,
or I'm crazy, therefore I am dangerous.
Inside conversations, I'm getting also a feeling that, again, since I've just jumped back in, you got to have variety in your tone is a bigger thing to really address here, because if every game session is grimdark, you are lost, you will go mad, and you never have something a little more rewarding, then the whole fantasy just starts breaking down.
That's a great point. Even in Delta Green games, we have the vignettes, which are often treated more comedically. There's still the foreshadowing of this is going to end badly for these characters, but they're not it's not hammer down all the time. There are lighter parts.
And I think that's something else we kind of brought up too when we eventually did the final Revelation postmortem, is that ultimately it can be entertaining for one shot, but ultimately it is a one trick pony, and you can only do that with your group so many times, at least once, before any other time it just gets tiring and repetitive.
And something else a game topic I would never do or go with was domestic violence.
I might be able to pull a game like that off, mechanically speaking, but I don't know if the players that I would.
I wouldn't do it.
You have the experience in order to treat that right, I think. But that would be domestic violence, because then you break up the fight, you separate the partner who is being abused. I'm not saying it's a woman necessarily. It could be, that's one thing about domestic violence. It could be either person, and that's not even counting. It's not
always physical violence.
It's always. It could be emotional. It could be a lot of things, and the problem is then that partner wants to go back to their abuser, because that's often the dynamic. From what and
how many times do you deal with that in game before you just go, you know what, forget this. I'm going to go get drunk at a bar.
Or I'm going to arrange the abuser's death in such a way that it looks like an accident, which is the player character thing to do.
Right.
Cut his brake lines.
But then again, it's also, when we're talking about having variety of tone, this is a good... these two topics kind of bridge together. It's what do you get out of the game? What kind of cathartic release are you getting out of the game? Are you going to get a cathartic release of taking a domestic abuser and cutting their brake lines and making it look like an accident? Okay.
Well, actually, this could be. I could see one scenario from that which would be adding a supernatural element to be what if you could what if you could fix the abuser through mind control? And then, you take away that person's free will, and suddenly they're the perfect romantic partner. But then, you've destroyed their free will. Is that a moral? There's a moral quandary for you.
I feel like that's been done.
It's probably been.
It probably is where somebody was morphed.
I mean, I know it's been done in fiction.
No, I know that's a theme that comes up in the Dresden Files books a lot.
Yeah, that sounds right. From the little I've read, but so there you go. So that's a moral quandary for you. Do you use do you take this supernatural ability to fix the problem by committing some other kind of crime, which is a very great dynamic for a story role-playing game or a story. But like that's a super dark area to go to, like, and so you would have to tell the people that this is kind of give them the premise of the game before you would do that. And again, going back into what you have to be discreet, you have to know your table.
That was the thing I was going to kind of concur with, was that just basically, again, going back to those old White Wolf books, if you really actually read the storytelling content as opposed to just reading through the character creation stuff and saying, I'm going to make this or I'm going to run this game.
Yeah.
They really do talk about discussing the theme, the mood, what kind of topics are being addressed. And I always liked that, but never.
They also had warnings at the front page of every Black Dog book.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm saying, so like in general, like a lot of game books do this now, is where you'll eventually find some chapter where it goes, make sure your group is cool that you're running this, and let them know what they're in for.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's true. I mean, a lot of also is dealing with uncomfortable stuff is, if the players are captured or enslaved or in some way, or they're being mind controlled, then you really need to give them a heads, because some players don't like the idea of their characters being compelled or being abused, and they can't fight back. Like,
Ross, what are you talking about? It's perfectly acceptable to roll persuade to mind control a player.
No, I'm talking like, all right, your character's been captured. This entire session is you just going to be being abused for 2 hours, and then you get your chance to escape. And then in the next session, there's a payoff where you can get revenge on your slavers or whatever. But this entire session, we have to build up to that, and then that would
and
be
even still to not spoil that to
yeah. There we go. There's the challenge. Like,
there's the challenge. How do you get the players to sit through that initial 2-hour session without telling them, oh, don't worry, they'll get theirs.
Yeah.
You just have to endure this first.
Yeah.
And I think it's important in those cases where you're still taking away a little bit of the player's agency, that you give them other options to other venues, like gathering other information, finding their escape route, make it like the great escape in their way before.
I mean, for me,
instead of spoiling for the whole table, you can talk to one player as an aside, just be like, hey, look, the focus is going to be you guys. If you guys escape, you'll get a chance to get back at these bastards. So I need you to be that cheerleader for that concept, so the rest of the party will get on
That's
board.
an interesting way of doing it. What I would do is I would just say, you will start out as prisoners, you will start out, or slaves or whatever. You will suffer, but then you will escape. You will definitely escape as long as you don't die during the attempt. Like, it will be treated as a fight or whatever. But then after that, it's up to you. I'm not gonna and so that's as far as I would go. So like, I would reassure players that yes, there will be a definite opportunity for you to escape or die in the attempt, and then go from there. Because for me, the interesting thing is whether they do try to go back to get revenge, or they're like, fuck this, I want to live the best revenge is living a good life. Fuck this, I want to get out. Which is what the dilemma a lot of people
didn't you actually do that once? I think it was a Forgotten Realms years and years
ago. Yeah. I think that was a very brief thing. Like, it
wasn't like a 2-hour session.
Yeah, it wasn't 2 hours, because there are a lot of scenarios out there where you start as prisoners and slaves, and then they go into great detail about what abuses you suffer, and I'm like, dude, really?
Like every Elder Scrolls game.
I'm talking about role playing, like tabletop,
or like the basic premise of how most Dark Sun campaigns start.
Yeah, Dark Sun. Yeah. Tom, how would you handle that situation? In terms of running the prisoner.
It once again depends on the game, whether they're starting as prisoners or whether they're
starting as
captured.
prisoners, and the idea is they escape.
I would just I would just kind of take I would start with just take them through a typical day.
Okay.
Just
so you're just putting them in the scenario. No warning, just go.
Well, I tell them you're going to start as prisoners.
Okay.
And basically, I would start just giving them what your basic day, and then I would start their actual decision making in the game. And on this day, something's different.
Okay.
Well, you kind of did that a little bit with
Divine Fire.
And Shanghai. Although with the
well, there we go. This is the perfect kind of thing. Kind of a disagreement, because in that scenario, the whole premise is that we were Shanghaied. And so I was like, oh, well, this sucks for my character, because it starts the game, we get drunk, we pass out, we wake up on the ship. And I'm like, but as a player, I know this is what's happening. So all right, whatever. But Aaron, you were not on board with this.
No, I was not. So that actually.
So this is kind of like talking about this, how to deal with sensitive issues. So yeah,
true. So and I would say it was not to the most severe level. Because ultimately,
we weren't whipped or tortured or anything.
Yeah, and everything really spurred from my argument of if they're looking for sailors, why would they take a geologist in a suit? But
well, the thing is, you don't have to
need to have any special training to learn how to tie knots and
scrub a deck.
Scrub deck.
You could walk and talk. That was literally their qualifications.
You were relatively young and healthy.
Yeah.
Because my reasoning was I had more money, so you could probably go hire off a sailor from them, but they can Shanghai didn't destroy the premise.
The whole reason they were Shanghaied is all the able-bodied sailors were out looking for gold.
Yeah. So there was a labor shortage. So like that was the historical premise of the game. Like that's happened in reality.
Yes.
So. But you didn't sign on for that, and that led to friction in the game. So I guess that's the last thing we should talk about. Is like this: you do this, you have a sensitive issue, and you put it in the game, and then there's pushback from the table. Like either someone's rejecting the premise of the game, or someone's just clearly out of it. He's just like, yeah, okay, or whatever. There's different.
What's going on Facebook?
Yeah. Well, there's different degrees of that. There's like, I'm doing my typical thing, or like, oh God, I don't want to be involved in this, and I can't say I don't want to just walk away from the table. So like, how do you there's all kinds of different ways players show that they're not on board with a game.
Because as much as we want to talk about the idea that, we're all rational adults and we can make decisions for ourselves about whether or not it's offensive and choose whether or not to participate in this activity.
Yeah.
No, if you're the type of person that's going to be bothered by that subject matter, you may not have the words of voice or the ability to defend yourself in that way.
Exactly.
That's part of the reason why people who are victims tend to continue being victims.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's part of the reason, but that's the effect. Like that's, people who are victims of one type of crime tend to be victims of other types of crimes because they can't rationalize or know how to protect themselves.
Right. Yeah, and that's not a moral judgment.
It's not. It's not a moral judgment. That's just a thing that is. That's all.
Yeah, we should be very clear. We're not saying that those people deserve any of that. It's that they, lack the ability to defend themselves in game terms, Yeah.
I don't want to stereotype too much, but gamers are not notorious for being high-minded and socially adept at every situation.
Right, we're not extroverted life of the parties usually. Yeah. So obviously we're general.
In a group situation, somebody who feels like put upon in that way might just not want to disappoint the group.
Exactly.
Or somebody else there, and they just didn't want to open their mouth about it. But then afterwards, they'll say something.
Yeah, or they stop coming to the table.
Right, they just don't.
That's their way of rejecting it.
Or
it's
they stop.
I'm busy.
Or they stop interacting altogether if they still do come. They just shut down during any kind of conflict in the game.
There's a lot of passive-aggressive type of things that they can do.
I wouldn't know if that's passive-aggressive, but I think that's just not knowing how to handle it.
Yeah. Well, okay, there's differing levels. Yeah. There definitely are ways that they could show up passive-aggressively. So, So how do you deal with that as a game master, like when that kind of thing shows up?
I think that's just like you would handle any other time when you're dealing with a player who's not engaged with your story. Just being like, hey, how did you feel about that scenario? How do you feel about the campaign? How do you feel about the character?
And this is one-on-one, obviously.
Yeah, this is one-on-one. Or, like Ross, you're really good about saying questions, comments, suggestions, and you take the criticism. You don't take it personally.
Yeah, I try to do that every game, specifically so like as a prompt so people will speak up.
Right.
You have to disassociate with criticism.
But like during the game table, like obviously you can do some damage control during the game, not just after or in between games. So,
yeah, for most of the time you can, but if the damage is being done because the premise of your game is I'm dealing with this controversial topic, that's going to be really hard to manage. So what would we do in that scenario?
Well, one thing is I kind of like I know what I would do if I notice there's pushback on the players on a certain element. And it's not necessarily a sense of issue. It's like some sort of game element, like I'm getting real crazy with Carcosa stuff, and the players are like, oh god, okay, maybe it's not Carcosa.
We're not falling for it, Peyton.
I start soft. I know I've soft pedaled or back pedaled on certain things, or like soft push it. Like I put it out there, but I don't really emphasize it.
Because I'd like to also, because we're going back to the topic. What shirt are you wearing today, by the way?
It is Carcosa's shirt from Cthulhu Wars. I don't see what that has to do with anything.
We'll just leave it at that. It's just
a great T-shirt, all right.
Well, and to be honest, and sometimes that can lead to something great, like shark fight.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think that was an example of showing how this can be dealt as a negotiation in game. Like, Aaron tried to essentially negate the premise, or pacifist resistance, essentially.
Yeah, because
civil disobedience. That's it.
That's the better way of that, because I didn't. I put in there like my character, but it was me.
It was you. Yeah. That's the whole point. Is that you can't use my character. We've talked about this in other episodes. You cannot use my character.
I try to make clear that there's no more isolated a person than being at sea in like the 19th century.
True, but it was just using the other. My other skills that I out on the page to try to at least buy my passage before it just came to shark punching.
Right. Well, what happened was it was this year's ago. It was a tier thing. First, you tried this, and Tom, you didn't just like shut it down, and like that was to your credit, Tom. You didn't just say no. Your character does this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fuck it. We're doing this. This is the premise of the game.
Doing it live.
I'm negating your agency. So you allowed Aaron to have his agency as a player and to get his point across that he was really fighting this as hard as he could. And then I, of course, not necessarily being the best or the worst person in the scenario, was like, why don't you just go kill a shark? And you're like, fine. And
I can't believe you're doing this, but okay.
But no, that was the way Aaron's saying, I can't use this character anymore. Let me kill him off so I can get a character who would agree with the premise of the game. That's how I'm rationalizing it now.
That's how we rationalize.
So it worked out for the best because you did pick a character who
and you got some awesome artwork for it.
Got some awesome artwork.
We got some awesome artwork, so that came out.
But that's kind of in the
and
future.
Also, the crew will never forget that.
Well, they're all dead.
Most
of them are dead.
Most of them are dead.
But
those that didn't have a lot of McDucks worth of gold, Ross.
Double gold.
Double gold. But that's how you do it. I think is a negotiation in the game. Just talk to the player, figure out what their issue with it is if you can during the game. Whether it's just like the premise, see if they can resolve it in character, and then definitely the major thing though is in between games, talk to that person, find out what it is, and make amends. Either say, well, this game isn't for you. We'll do something else later on, or I'll change this so it's not like this. There's so many ways that people could reject a game that we can't really give you advice on how to do that. So
not without specifics.
Yeah, not without specifics. So in the comments,
let us know.
if you have specific issues or types of issues that have shown up in your games before, like this player always hates this, I always want to do this type of issue, like he just hates the idea of being a prisoner, or he hates the idea of, or he always wants to do this problematic thing. He always is the character who, I don't know, I can't even think of it. Or he wants to be a violent, crazy person. He wants to be a fish mouth, and I'm tired of fish mouths because it doesn't make any sense. And how do I deal with him? So yeah, players can bring up problematic stuff too.
Always being a neurotic, foul-mouthed jerk.
No, that's murder hobos.
That's kind of what we do.
That is a standard, sir.
It is a standard.
It's a gold standard.
So yeah, when a player wants to be problematic, that's an entirely different thing.
I know we've talked about how to deal with problematic players.
Yeah, but if you have comments, questions, or things,
we'll answer them.
Post them in the comments. We'll reply to them in there, possibly in the next episode as well, depending on how much of material we get out.
I really would like for at some point to get Caleb's input on this type of issue.
Sure.
At some juncture.
Yeah. We'll probably do a post-mortem for Delta Green God's Teeth at some point. So we can definitely talk to him about that then. But certainly before then, too. Next time we have this. He was just unavailable today because, finals and all that. Yeah. So I think we've hit on a lot of stuff. Is there any final words on this topic you guys want to talk about?
I'm sure there'll be more things to talk about. And I know at some point, Melissa and I need to sit down and actually talk about mental health issues in RPGs and be able to do that as a side bonus thing that we've talked about doing before.
Yeah, that would be great. Having the input of mental health professionals on mental health in games would be good. Because I think the new Delta Green does it well. Temporary insanity is your irrational mind shuts down, so it's an emotional response, fight, flight, or catatonia, and then you develop. They develop long-term traumas based on their exposure, like PTSD or things like that. But you have some control. It's supposed to make sense, you lose enough sanity in a burning building. Oh, you have pyrophobia now, So,
and that's and
it's meant to be logical. It's not to be you roll on a table and you get
It's just, I was trapped in a burning building and now I'm a necrophiliac.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not supposed to be that.
Lord knows I've been there.
As to how there's a logical progression.
Well, if you think of one thing the Delta Green is
it's out there.
Right. Well, Delta Green is also trying to emphasize the Cthulhu mythos as a mental cancer. It does screw you up, not just on a mental level, but on a physical level. Like I've read Delta Green stories. They're like, yeah, we went on this op and my arm falls off every fall and then it regrows in the spring. I don't know why. It just does. So there's just like weird shit like that. So, but anyways, when we get back, we'll have shout outs and anecdotes. Yeah. And we're back. I'm not sure what music I'm going to choose. It may not even be Vaporwave, but
that's a lie, and you know it.
It might be Future Funk, but maybe not now if you're going to give me that kind of sass.
Fine.
So that's right.
Watch the sass, Captain Sassy Pants.
Yeah, it might be anime T-shirts by Groovy Godzilla.
I know you're still threatening. Are you still threatening to change my user ID without me knowing? Or?
Maybe. I don't know.
Put in some Chap Hop.
I have to find Creative Commons license Chap Hop. So
okay. Well, crap.
if I can, I will. There might be Chap
would some
Hop artists would do
or
that.
some Gregorian chanting.
That Creative Commons licensed. Yeah, or
Yeah.
public domain. Maybe
It's-
public domain.
Gregorian chant's so old, it's got to be Creative Commons.
Well, it's the recording of it.
Yeah.
Legally. It's the copyright applies to the recording. Which is,
But yeah,
Yay, copyright.
Macross 80. That's like 82 to 94.
I don't think that is
Creative Commons license.
Yeah.
Aaron, you're just using words now.
That is a future.
We should
funk
talk
group.
about. Yeah, it is. I'm aware of that. So we should talk about shoutouts. And speaking of that, I have one from Japan. But this is not Future Funk. This is actually a manga I read called Showa, 1944 to 1953. This is the second volume in a history of modern Japan, written by a one of the legends of manga who just died recently at age 93, Shigeru Mizuki. I think that's his name. But anyways, he lived through World War II. He was a soldier in World War II. He was drafted. And basically, and this is a history of Japan as a nation and of his family and himself. So it alternates between like what's going on in the big picture and what's going on in Shigeru's life. And it's brilliant. It's like the volume. It's like phone book thickness. It's a very thick thing, but obviously as a manga, it's a pretty quick read. And it's very interesting because he goes into what the people of Japan were thinking and talking about when this is going on. We kind of think of Japan as like, Tojo and the imperialism, them just conquering and hating America and stuff like that. But, he goes into the internal domestic politics of Japan, and it was actually more complex and nuanced than what you would think in history books. For example, the Prime Minister of Japan in 1940 or 1941, Kone, he and some other politicians considered switching sides from Germany, because Germany was actually not being that great of an ally to Japan. They didn't even give them a heads up when they invaded Poland, for example. I believe they were kind of like keeping them at arm's distance. And they changed their mind about allying with the Soviets. They're like, oh, hey, Japan, we hate those Soviets. Let's ally and we'll defend each other from the Soviets. And then, Hitler side allies with the Soviets and then breaks it. And so, like, Japan's kind of miffed at them. And they're looking to the United States, and a lot of them can read between the lines. They're like, logistically, we can never win against the United States. Let's just, why don't we switch sides and ally with the Americans? But the sticking point was they actually negotiated. They tried to negotiate with the Americans before Pearl Harbor. The problem was that the Americans didn't want to recognize any of Japan's conquests in Asia. The whole, all those massacres in China and other thing, kind of a sticking point. And, but then these were still going on when it was revealed that a senior advisor in Kone's administration was a Soviet spy, and this or informant working for this guy posing as a German journalist named Richard Sorge, and this became a scandal that basically undid this gave Tojo the justification to take over the entire government. So you can imagine some sort of alternate history where that didn't happen, and instead they switch sides. I mean, imagine that if they're like, America's like, yeah, okay, we'll let you have this, and you can, but then help us go fight the Germans or whatever. And so, yeah,
Nazis.
Yeah. So yeah,
I would say that would actually be pretty fascinating to see if we came to the future where MacArthur really didn't bring a lot of the Western aspects, it forced a lot of the Western aspects into Japan,
exactly.
and then we may still have had the imperial system up.
Yeah, exactly. It's I never heard about this possible alliance with America. Because Admiral Yamato was like, yeah, I'll win against America for the first 6 to 12 months, and then I'll lose because we'll run out of stuff. We'll run out of ships. We'll run out of oil. They have all of it. We don't have any. So.
And I would say at least for kind of wartimes, current media with wartime, would you say it's good about showing the average day of life of the Japanese? Kind of like The Wind Rises did a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, it does, because like it's they talk about his family life and like how they were just everything gets rationed. The father's always scamming to make more money. It goes into like what the average person thought, what they were told to think, and what they really thought. I mean, it's a fascinating look. So anyways, it's a really good book. It's the second volume out of 4. I've already ordered the third one. Anyways, let's see here. I know all you guys are all up in a video game. What's up with that?
Oh yeah, so Dan and I,
okay, me and my eternal quest to be amused. I was
first world problems.
Yeah, I know, right? I like playing MMOs. I know. Oh God, Skinner boxing, blah blah blah, whatever. Shut up. Let me enjoy my life as I see fit.
Fair enough.
I was trying to get people to play WoW with me, and that met to varying degrees of success. But apparently, because the GroupMe chat for Gen Con General Chat is still going strong.
Yeah.
When we're at the halfway point between last Gen Con and next Gen Con.
Hey, we love you guys. Keep it rolling.
I know, right? It's great. It's a great way to pass time at work. But we got talking about nostalgia over Final Fantasy XIV, and then somebody finally got Aaron to decide that he could give it a try, and so now we started our own free company on the Cactar server, and it is called Mistakes Were Made.
Perfect. And I will put a link up in the show notes to link to the thread on the forums that will have this information. So if you play Final Fantasy XIV, you can go hang out with Dan and Aaron and some of the other some RPPR listeners.
And
you will be entertained.
Yeah, to bring on there because we have Kat and Richard and who else?
People who have never been on the podcast.
Yeah.
So all right, yeah.
But we know them by first name because we interact with them.
Because they had the luxury of time and to.
And what race are you playing? What's the name?
I forget.
Okay, I forget the name of mine. It's basically the Hobbit race of it.
You're a potato.
Lalafell potato.
Tom, you have one?
I do.
Okay.
That's reminded me going back to what you were talking about.
Okay.
It's a movie that I watched just about a couple weeks ago, The Yamato.
Okay.
I think the literal Japanese translation for the title is like the men's Yamato.
Yeah.
It's about like a cadet joining the Yamato crew in like 1942. It's about his career up until Operation Tengo.
Yeah. And
they do not. I think it's interesting showing like discipline among the Japanese Navy. Yeah, it's where caning is commonplace.
Yeah. That's mentioned in the manga too. A lot of physical violence, just beating the shit out of.
Though it was but it also shows that there's also limits. Like one guy, he's accepting his punishment.
Yeah.
But then the guy hits him and hits a bone, and the guy suddenly whirls around this officer. It's like swearing at him, like, "You hit a bone, you son of a bitch," and then punches his officer in the face. And the higher officer is like, "Yeah, he shouldn't have hit you in the bone. That's not the discipline." But it's also not. It does not shy away from showing what happens during a full air attack on the battleship with no air cover.
Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Sounds fascinating. When was it made?
It's like 2000. I want to say like 2008.
Oh, very recent. Recent. Okay.
Yeah, it was shortly after the wreck was found.
Okay. And speaking of Japanese things, Dan, you mentioned an anime that you.
In one of my late night gaming binges, my second screen was running Netflix, and I was watching 7 Deadly Sins, and David has watched it as well, and we've talked about it. Essentially, the way the characters behave is pretty much as if RPPR sat down and did a fantasy anime style. Like, there's a very serious plot. We're all super badass at what we do when it comes time to fight. But in between things, it's just a bunch of zany bullshit.
Zany bullshit. Great tagline.
Zany bullshit, side table talks, things that aren't relevant to the discussion.
Yeah.
It's all good. I enjoyed it. It was... Apparently, David did more research into it and found out more things through the manga, which, effort. So...
yeah, and there's one more Japanese thing. Sorry.
Why should we be sorry about that?
All right, fair enough. One Punch Man. I've already mentioned the manga on the previous episode, but now there's an anime out, and they're up to episode 11 or 12 or something like that, and it's amazing, and you should watch it. It's beautiful. It is the only anime. If you had to watch one anime in your entire life, this would be that anime. Because it's all
agree.
of anime in one series.
But it is blatantly riffing on every single trope that ever existed.
Beautiful and perfect, and you will not disparage it. But Aaron, there's another movie you watched that you really enjoyed.
It was part of our movie night, and I'd been looking forward to this, called Blood-Sucking Bastards. And to me, this is kind of what Shaun of the Dead was to zombie films. So,
but for vampires.
So the entire premise is that it takes place in one... office building, so it's very much kind of a bottle movie.
A bottle episode is for TV shows, and that's like literally one set. There's more than one set.
There's more than one set, but it's just the office building, and I think we see maybe one of the other characters' apartments.
It's a very low budget movie.
But it follows the adventures of one of the office drones who is going through his normal trials and tribulations at work, just trying to deal with his loser best friend, his girlfriend who may or may not...
Best friends? There's two of them.
Oh, yeah, his best friends.
God.
The jerks in the office, and one of his rivals ends up coming in, supplanting his job, and this is a spoiler, but it's pretty much set by the trailer. That this guy is a vampire, and he starts turning everybody.
Yeah.
So, and it's wonderful.
Shenanigans ensue.
Yeah, wonderfully gory, wonderful on all turns, and it has one of the best twists I've seen in this kind of movie in a while.
Don't mention anything. Like in terms of Office humor, Office Space meets The Lost Boys. But
it's a good example of it.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you haven't seen it, Dan. Oh man, it's really good. It's really entertaining,
and it's a pretty short watch too. So it's not. It doesn't. That's actually one of the best compliments.
It's not rubber. All right. Okay. It actually has a plot.
I'm just gonna internally not trust your recommendations on that.
Well, and that's actually a big compliment I can give.
I wasn't even in the continent when they suggested that. All right.
No. But you still suggested it and thought it was great.
I do think it because it is great.
It is.
Anyway.
Not getting on that argument, but another compliment I can give to the movie is that it actually is very tightly paced, and it does not feel like it lags at all at any place. So,
it was great. I would also like to brief shout outs. They don't really need our help, but I would like to give a shout out to Mystery Science Theater 3000 Kickstarter. They raised enough money, most crowdfunded video project ever.
They beat Veronica Mars.
Take that, Veronica Mars. And so there'll be 14 episodes or something like that.
Yes, they've with the Kickstarter contributions and the add-on contributions, they managed to get over $6 million.
Yeah, so it'll be like 14.
Yep. Yeah. And so that funded everything.
A great cast: Patton Oswalt, Felicia Day, the comedians. I can't remember their names, but they look very funny. I've seen some. There's like Paul Tompkin as the new guy. I think.
No, it's one of the other guys from either. I think he's from College Humor. I could be wrong. I need to look him up. But we have two new voices for Crow and Servo, which I love, and
they're trying to get a lot of people to write for it, like Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland.
Dan Harmon, Justin Roiland. They're expressing interest in bringing everybody from the old cast back to do stuff because Joel specifically said that they hoped at some point to have stories where either he or Mike comes back in for a little bit or somehow the bot's old voices start rebooting into themselves at random. So no, it was a great, and they did have a stream going on for the last couple hours, which apparently suffered some technical issues from what I heard.
It was totally like public access doing a telethon, like local public access, like even lower budget than like Weird Al and UAH.
I know, and the Magicians, and I thought it was
bad. But it was so funny.
It was great though. That actually embodies the spirit of MST3K. That you're just kind of going with the low budget approach of it to have fun, and it really works. And I welcome the return of one of my best childhood memories and to the next generation.
And speaking of MST3K, something that would be MST3K worthy would be a movie we also saw that I enjoyed called Radioactive Dreams.
Wow.
Because it's basically Fallout the movie, May 1985. It was actually directed by Albert Pignon, who is the guy who directed Cyborg and Nemesis, among other things that we have.
Are you surprised?
No, I'm not. I kind of wish I did. So it's about two kids who get locked into a fallout shelter, armed only with books on magic, dancing from the 40s, and Raymond Chandler and detective novels.
Yeah,
and so they bust out into the post-nuclear wasteland wanting to be private eyes, and they talk like they're from the 40s. And it's just... There's a Pip-Boy in it. There's like mutants. There's raiders.
There's a errant nuclear missile.
Themed gangs for every imaginable subculture stereotype in the 80s.
Yes,
and
super music, super new wave soundtrack, like ridiculous.
And speaking of the music, the Pat Benatar lookalike that they had there, I'm not convinced that
the Kmart Pat Benatar. Yeah,
sorry, whomever you are. But yeah, I'm completely convinced that at least a third of that movie was set only for her music video that they could splice into later.
Paid for half the budget, super low budget.
Yeah, because in between the action scenes in the middle of the movie, they are just switching back to her, and she is just mugging like hell every single time.
Vamp harder for the camera. So yeah, it's on YouTube now, like the full movie, and yeah, it's just like a ridiculous premise for a movie.
It's a thing.
It's a thing that exists, and we watched it. And speaking of that, I don't know if we mentioned this podcast before, but Polygon does a series called Monster Factory. They're doing a thing for Fallout 4. I'll link to it. Just watch it. I don't want spoiling it would be too much. It's just a beautiful.
We're not going to even tell them the premise of the show.
Oh no, okay. No, just watch it. So because it's amazing and beautiful. Just like the character they create for Fallout 4. So, anyway.
Well, can we at least say the name of this character?
No, that's a big reveal because that's like 10 minutes in the first episode. Okay. Anecdotes. Dan, I know you have been running Dresden Files, and I do want to mention I'm still finalizing plans for the podcast site where I'm going to be changing the podcast schedule. For next year, I haven't finalized the plans yet, but we will definitely be posting Dresden Files next year.
But Ross, I'm afraid of change.
What? Oh,
I'm afraid of change.
We fear change. Damn, you got to before me.
Don't go full Grognard on me. Never go full Grognard. Game design has improved since the 80s, believe it or not. Okay.
No, it hasn't.
Oh, God. No, it's too late.
Symbiota is king.
No, that's even worse.
It's not true.
Every few decades, Symbiota rises out of
Someone rubbed
Ness.
the basic D&D set on him.
Oh, no.
GURPS.
Gygax
is actually okay.
Gygax used to do that, and he's dead now. There's nobody to protect us.
So, anyway, tell us a little bit about the Dresden Files.
Well, I have enjoyed running this campaign because it's one of those. The way I probably took some liberties with how it was designed and just kind of ran with it.
Sure.
It's one of those campaigns that I've got a basic framework of notes of things that I want to happen in the campaign and things that I know is going on in the city and the meta plot at large. But a lot of the time it's just like I throw a few hooks out there, you guys bite on them, and then hilarity ensues and I just respond. So it's been pretty great.
Yeah, last episode in particular.
I've enjoyed mispronouncing everything that has a proper title.
Yeah. Shaun's in the game now.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun because we have two groups for it, and I think we mentioned this before in the podcast, but it's been where we've actually had character development for the characters.
The thing that I enjoyed the most, and I think part of the reason why this campaign is going as well as it has to do with the fact that I took the character creation part of, whose paths have you crossed, who else's paths have you crossed, and your first adventure stuff, and I made everybody vignette their way through meeting each other. If it weren't for that, then there probably wouldn't be nearly as much character cohesion.
Yeah.
And even doing it in massive sessions and having cross-pollination from one group to the other helps define the central story in a way that doesn't override what each table is doing.
Yeah.
I immensely enjoyed that, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel so far that at least the first leg of the campaign was a success.
Yeah, we have finished an entire season, tier, chapter, whatever you want to call it, of the campaign. So we're on the second one.
Yeah.
And second, we've done like maybe 1 or 2 episodes on each team, and then I was like,
I do science.
Yeah.
And holidays are happening. Let's not fight holiday schedules and just resume it back in January.
Great contribution.
No, we got a lot of here, and I can at least say for one that as somebody who came in with minimal knowledge of the Dresden universe, I honestly ended up enjoying it far more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I am reading the books you have
I
foisted
enjoyed it
upon me.
exactly as much as I thought I would, which is a ton.
Yeah.
So I had faith in your abilities, Dan.
Ross, you had faith in
Unlike
your
some people.
You had
That's not
faith in
abil-
your character concept
That's
probably more
ability-
than anything else.
Okay, yeah, true.
Yeah.
And you suggested it to me. I'm like, yeah, done, sold. I'm in.
Although I
Stop
am
thinking you've hit gold. I will do whatever in this game. To
Although
be a
I'm
teenage
looking,
Slender Boy.
I'm absolutely looking forward to one thing when you do get this setting up. Not spelling anything. Just there's a moment where both Bill and David were just going, no. So
Ross wasn't here for that.
He wasn't here for that. So when it comes up,
What a country.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Dresden Files.
Oh God, that's another thing. Yeah,
I feel really good about getting for that particular reference, Tom. I feel very good about pulling that story together on the fly.
that was. I had a lot of fun with that episode. That was going to be. That's a good
I'm going to
episode.
say nothing more than that.
Yeah.
So just to give you your previews.
In other anecdotal news, we have also run another session of Monster of the Week, Taos, New Mexico, Tartar Sink, whatever you want to call it. Shaun, you're very happy.
I love this system. It's extremely character centric. I'm going to say it again, Aaron. The man with the van.
You chose your character concept, Aaron. You literally have no one else to blame.
It's awesome. It's cool.
No. I am not to blame for errant nicknames.
But you set that nickname up.
But they're fun.
You choose the character, a male character with a van.
Therefore,
he's
you
not
are
wrong.
And he's the leader of the group, ostensibly.
Because he has the wheels.
Yes, and he's got an organization.
Yeah.
And he gives us money. And,
An organization that really doesn't like me.
Wait, has someone spray painted free candy on the side of this van yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Fail one of those rolls or get a complication. Complicated rolls are the best rolls.
We have painted the van.
Yeah.
But see, you were just waiting for the moment where I run out of luck. So you're waiting
yes,
for that.
and by the
faded
rules,
breath.
you don't get it back ever.
I still have luck.
Yeah, you all have luck.
Oh, Winkle's got more than...
You have like
that's
1
Hinkle.
point left, right?
Yes.
No,
I
that's
get 1
Hinkle,
point.
sorry. Hinkle's got more luck than anybody else in the group, so...
Yeah.
I live.
Yeah, so that's going to be an amazing game when that happens. Oh, yeah, it'll be on.
I know what I need to save it to. We're technically after this.
But
last
I ran
game.
another scenario. It was a different one. It was a darker one. It was not quite as goofy as the Dreamlands one. You guys had fun with it.
We still,
No, we
we,
didn't,
we
son.
still made it
It was
goofy.
more investigative. Yeah, well, that's the premise. Yeah, the game. Because it's like Monster of the Week tries to make it, emphasize that it's about the characters. Like they have to investigate this thing, but it's how they deal with it. So it's again like shows like X-Files and Fringe. It's about Scully and Scully and Mulder, blah. And not necessarily the fluke man or whatever.
In this one, I honestly felt like this was less our Buffy episode versus it was more like one of the darker X-Files or Fringe episodes.
And I don't want to. I know what art I'm going to be using for that episode, but I don't want to reveal it yet because that would be too much.
I'm not again not revealing, but if you do reveal the inspiration behind it later on, that's actually pretty cool. I like the idea of doing that for inspiration.
Yeah. So everything in that Monster of the Week campaign I have decided going to be inspired by a thing. So like the first episode was inspired by that. Actually it's like a series of articles in newspapers from 1904, good stories for children, and so the second episode will be inspired by another thing. So and of course finally Tom. You recently interviewed a game designer about a game.
Ixu and Draconis.
Here Be Dragons.
He instructed me on the correct way to pronounce it.
Okay, furries in space. Got it. Yeah.
All right,
Let's do it.
Furry
Okay.
close face.
Sean's been dying to do
Well,
this.
do we need we doing a countdown? Just so we can do this?
No, I'm just gonna do it. Man.
Yeah.
All right.
Furries in space.
Oh, there those levels.
That would be to be fair, there is a lot more.
We were trying to be careful.
There's a lot more to it, but it's. Yeah.
All right. See, we're not wrong. And we've run 2 sessions of it, or you've run 2 sessions
I have.
of it. And any particular highlights you like from the game so far that you want to tease the listeners with?
I don't know. Just one thing I'd say, I was just loving all the interaction of the characters. It does half my work for me right there. Because
isn't that great?
It is great.
Character-focused games are very entertaining.
Or just calmly all deciding, like, yeah, we're gonna gas an apartment block.
Okay. No. Okay. To be fair, you basically. To be fair,
We got railroaded.
Yeah, I wouldn't say railroaded, but you may you could do it the hard way, or like, here's this guy who can help you gas the thing. Here's the guy who will pay for it. The gassing's the easy solution. Water rolls downhill, go gas them. All right, we'll go gas. Yeah, it's a lot easier.
You have Nerf guns. Here's some gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, to be fair, in the interview I discovered that why combat seemed to be not quite as deadly as we thought. Because as I equip them just as normal people on the street, they're all using the weakest weapons. That's why.
The Nerf guns. Yeah.
So that's totally going to change.
Okay. Fair enough.
So we get something outside of the Nerf Assault Max.
Yeah, but also
do you guys at least have Nerf nukes?
Then make the ultimate decision. But yeah, I also either enjoy, I gave each character a secret card, like this is like a backstory for your character. Yeah. I was really couldn't wait for that reveal.
Yeah, it was an interesting way to tie things in. Yeah, it was a good gimmick. I like it as a way. I wouldn't do it for every game. But
But this one worked. I've done 2 sessions of it thus far. I think I'm learning more of the system each time I run it, and I've got 2 more planned for it. It's got a definite endpoint.
Great. Yeah.
And also, Review Cultist will be doing the artwork, some arts for it.
All right, so we'll have pretty little pictures for it.
You'll have such glorious little pictures. They are beautiful.
So that's stuff to look forward to probably next year because we backlog. But we're taking steps to alleviate the backlog by getting out more games, more APs.
You realize that the more APs you put out means the more gaming we have to do, Ross.
Not that we've been doing more gaming than posting in terms of like that. I am trying to. Well, I don't know. That's part of the reason why I haven't finalized the plans yet is the whole thing. So
I mean, we have to, be able to at least keep pace. We need to at least game for as many sessions as you're posting every week.
Kind of. I don't know. We have a lot to go through first. we could slow down a little.
I don't know, Ross. You think we're going to at some point hit peak APs?
I hope so.
Just full saturation.
Yeah, full saturation. Just exploit that AP market for all it's worth, and then cash out in my golden parachute. There's 1,000 there or something.
Live Brando-esque for the rest of your days.
Hundreds of dollars. Okay,
1,000 there. That's a little ambitious, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a little ambitious.
Yeah.
100 air at least.
Multi-100 air.
Thanks for thanks for the vote of confidence there, guys. I really appreciate it. So,
hey, you know what? At some point, maybe the Patreon feed will just really take off.
Yeah.
And you'll just be sitting there like, we'll have diamond-encrusted mics to record on.
Which are terrible for acoustic.
Hey, fun fact, everybody. He demands all of his Patreon payments in Mercury dimes.
Wow.
What?
An electronic currency so exotic it doesn't even exist yet.
What is Bitcoin? No, you're not even doing that anymore?
Apparently not. I put all my money in Dogecoin. Don't you? And I don't care. I pronounce it Doge.
Much value.
Yeah, wow.
Very rich. Wow.
All right, on that note, we'll be ending RPPR episode 123, Pushing the Envelope. This is Ross Payton.
This is Aaron Karsten.
This is Tom.
Yeah.
Shaun, I guess.
And Dan.
Dun, 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 dun.
Wah.
That's